Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Facebook, the ABC15 Facebook page for the first ABC15 virtual town hall of hopefully a few, trying to help you out with the various issues you're having involving the coronavirus and the issues involving finances and all. We decided actually to look at unemployment questions today because it seems to be what is on most people's mind and making people desperate in a sense because they haven't gotten unemployment and they're not working. And it's gone on for weeks and months. So if we haven't received hundreds, we've probably received thousands of complaints from people who can't get into the system. And we're going to talk all about those things in a little bit here. But I wanted to introduce who's with us. That's Courtney Holmes. Wave, Courtney, up there, the investigative reporter with ABC15. And Courtney's been covering a lot of these situations and talked to a lot of people who've had issues and taken a lot of them to the Department of Economic Security. And then we have two attorneys from Community Legal Services. We have Nina Torgovnik. Hi, Nina.
Hi.
And we have Amanda Caldwell. And Amanda's there as well. And they deal with this on an everyday basis with Community Legal Services. And we're going to get into also community legal and how you might be able to get help through them if you qualify, and we'll go over that as well. So your questions, bring them to us. You can just print them here, text them, and we will go over them. And if it's something that we can answer, try to help with, then we'll do that. So I wanted to get started. I think, Courtney, you want to talk about the various pots of money or eligibility that there are involved with unemployment insurance.
Yeah. So I just want to do just a little refresher about the money and what's available. There's the first, that is the normal unemployment, right? You had an employer, you were laid off, you worked full time, and you should be eligible to receive the $600 from the CARES Act and whatever.
Okay. All right, Courtney's frozen. I think we're going to have a couple of those probably today because I've gone through the same thing. Is it just you and me, Nina, right now?
I think Amanda's there. I don't know if she can hear.
Amanda, you're there too? Okay, you're there. Okay, I can hear you, Amanda. Well, let's talk about what Courtney was going to talk about. When she gets back, she can talk a little more about that. But they're the three pots, basically: unemployment, and then she was going to, I think, talk about the pandemic unemployment assistance (PUA), and then I guess the third one was, and she could talk more about that. Well, let's talk about PUA though, and what that is and why that has become such a problem for so many people.
So PUA is a pandemic unemployment assistance, and that is to help people who were laid off or their hours were reduced because of the COVID-19 virus.
Okay.
What's happened is that at no time in unemployment's history has there been payments for people who were not eligible.
Okay.
So about 170,000 people got checks last week, and the system went live May 12th to capture the data for the people who were monetarily ineligible for unemployment. So you typically gig workers, independent contractors, people who didn't make enough money were not considered to be eligible for unemployment, and you just didn't get anything. With PUA, you're now eligible. The least you can make in Arizona is $117 a week. So people got a check for about $21.51, which was $117 plus $600 for 3 weeks.
Do they have those problems worked out that they've had even? I mean, for months, it seems like they gave no answers as to why the system wasn't in place. Then they talked about the system in May 12th. Now there's some bugs in the system. Is that correct?
That is correct. The unemployment computer system is over 30 years old.
Okay.
So that's, like 150 in people years. So it's very old and outdated. Then they're trying to capture data that the system wasn't designed to capture.
Okay.
So if you were not eligible for unemployment before COVID, they just sent you a letter, you're not eligible. Now they have to go back and review all the claims. And what they did was they sent these checks out before they had the computer system up and running. So some people are going to have problems because the dates on the check, they may have gone back to work. and the dates that they were given the check for may include dates where they were working. Okay. And the system isn't designed to pick that up yet. And we're still trying to figure out what to advise people who got checks, and if they already went back to work, what they need to do, because it could be fine for right now, but in 5 years they may have an overpayment that they didn't, foresee at all. So that's one issue.
Courtney, you wanted to, before you went off, we talked about the two. We talked about typical unemployment. We talked about PUA. You want to talk about a third.
And then there's a final, PEUC. That is when you have exhausted your benefits. There are about 7,000 people waiting for that. The state hasn't even begun to set that up. So they've started with PUA. It's still got some bugs. As of Sunday, a lot of people have still not been able to file for, or rather certify for the past week. But there is with DES says that they are aware that there's a problem. So they're working on it. With PEUC, people who have exhausted their benefits, the state still does not have anything in place for them. So there's not a whole lot to do there. But when it comes to one of the things we get questions about a lot, which is the active issues. Yeah. So that means that you have filed for unemployment. Often you have been approved. Maybe you even got a Bank of America card from DES, but it says that you have active issues. We've seen that usually has to do with PTO being paid out or vacation time being paid out or something like that. You do have to talk to somebody from DES to get that handled. Now, we've seen where magically money just shows up in people's accounts without speaking to anybody. They'll have active issues for weeks and then one day they just get paid. Yeah. But often you do have to speak to DES. And one of the things I want to point out today is that a lot of people don't know that DES is open on Sundays. So you can call that number on Sundays. It's not just Monday through Friday, despite what their phone message says when you call. They pay their Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, etc. They are answering phones on Sunday, and that is a lower volume day. Friday and Sundays are lower volume days for DES. Okay. So that might be a better time to call. Monday is their heaviest day for getting calls.
And that's been a huge concern. In fact, in the beginning, that was everything. And it's still, people have called, you get people who say they've called 100 times and they can't get through. I want to get into the active issue just a bit because of something I think they're correlated with that the attorneys said yesterday. But I also wanted to say that we did invite DES to be part of this, and they sent an email. Thanks for extending this opportunity to us. At this time, our staff continue to work around the clock to assist unemployed Arizonans, and we will have to politely decline your invitation to participate in the town hall. If there are any questions we can assist you with, please send them our way. Well, I think we'll have a few questions to send their way.
Yeah.
by the end of this. And I also want to talk about Community Legal Services just briefly. It's a great organization, and there's a limit of income that you work with, lower income. But I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it's based on current income. So there could be people who didn't qualify before, whose incomes were too high, who now do qualify for your help, correct?
That is definitely correct. So if you're not making any money now and you don't have thousands of dollars in the bank, you definitely should apply for our services and we can try and help you.
Okay. And Cortland, maybe you could put that on the screen at some point, unless we already have it there, just how to get in touch with Community Legal Services. There it is right there, CLSAZ.org. And you go through there. It's an easy website, and you can see if you qualify for that help. And then you can get the help of these two ladies, hopefully. You mentioned active issues. Yesterday when we talked with Nina and Amanda, you mentioned something that was interesting. And I don't know if they're the same or if I'm off here, but what you're having to do that you're having to fight some other battles that are going on here in a backed up system where how the person was actually laid off, or was that person terminated, and employers saying one thing and the employee saying something different. Go into that a little bit, if you would. Nina or Amanda, either one. Those things that you have to deal with on a daily basis. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Where
Right.
can you tell? Are the hearings or what's going on?
Well, if you've been denied unemployment or if you were granted unemployment and your former employer wants to appeal, then you can appeal and you are given a hearing. It's an administrative hearing before an administrative law judge. All the hearings are over the phone now. That's been that way for about 15 years. So unemployment was actually ahead of the curve for that. And at the hearing, the judge listens to both sides and then makes a decision, not necessarily only based on what the deputy determined. So you can appeal your denial. Also your former employer has the same right to appeal the fact that you got unemployment insurance.
Okay. Now, are there some people who are complaining who say, I can't get any answers about what the problem is, and that could be the issue, or would they know that?
That could be, remember, before COVID-19, unemployment was getting about 3,000 cases a month. That jumped astronomically. They had no notice that this was going to happen. So their computer system is old. They didn't have enough employees. They don't have enough administrative law judges to keep up with everything. So it could be an issue where someone has to actually just go through their case and see if they were terminated, if they were laid off, why they were terminated, what the former employer says, and then make that decision. And there are thousands of cases behind.
And that's what people are having trouble getting anybody to talk to them about. When
Right.
you go through these emails, you'll see that when the person does get lucky enough to get hold of somebody, they're told to go to a different department, and then they can't get anybody there. So it's just so frustrating. We want to also, I think Courtney and I were talking earlier. Courtney, I don't know if you want to talk a little about this, but how as things are changing a little bit and people are going back to work, there's a couple of concerns. One, about making too much, or if they're only part-time and only make a few hours, what can they get from unemployment, and does it hurt that? And I guess the second thing is, if they're told to go back to work, yet they still have concerns that they don't want to bring. Well, let me read you a couple of these things. First of all, it's about earning the money. I guess we'll start with that. While collecting PUA, can you earn some money? Yes, you can, correct?
Up to a certain point, not much, right,
Yeah.
Nina and I did just say this last week. Go ahead.
So the most you can make in Arizona on unemployment is $240 a week. We're the second lowest in the country for unemployment insurance benefits. Each state gets to decide how to distribute the PUA funds. And in Arizona, DES decided that you have to be eligible for some amount of money in Arizona benefits in order to get the federal benefits. So if you make $239, then you would be eligible for $1 of unemployment insurance, and then you would get the extra $600. If you make $240 or more, then the state of Arizona and DES has decided that you are not eligible for those $600 extra dollars.
Okay.
If your hours vary, so that one week you're working less hours and you make less than $240, then you would be eligible for the $600. So you can keep filing your claim, but remember, you have to file on the weeks that you earn money. Otherwise, that's fraud, and there's overpayments and penalties, and fraud is not something that we want to have people have on the records.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that I know a lot of people are waiting for the initial payment to begin with, but once that happens, and if you do get a part-time job, or if your job calls you back part-time and you don't have the same amount of hours that you did before, you still can file, or you still can certify every single week. And if your hours fall below that 240 mark, right? So if you get to if you make $239 in 1 week, you still qualify for that extra $600. Okay. So if I'm in the situation, I'm going to try and work with my employer to figure out, okay, how can I get just under that?
How can I get right?
In order to still qualify for that $600.
Okay. All right. I want to remind people, just in case you're just joining us, thank you for being here. This is an ABC15 virtual town hall. We're talking about probably the biggest issue we're seeing these days involving finances, and it's unemployment. and how people have had a real tough time getting their money or getting any questions from the Department of Economic Security. The Rebound Arizona, we've been doing stories on this. That's investigator Courtney Holmes. She's been doing stories on this for months, I think, by now, and talked to a lot of people with different issues involving unemployment. We also have two attorneys with us. We have Amanda Caldwell and Nina Targovnik, and they're both from Community Legal Services. And Community Legal Services is an organization you might be able to get help with. There's their website right there, and it's based on income, but your income is based on current income. So if you're down because of what's going on now, you might qualify for their help. I also wanted to say that we invited DES to this, and they politely declined, saying that they were busy, but that they had time and wanted to know if there were any questions we had for them. So maybe we'll just send them the whole thing. We could do that, just and give it to them and see if they answer those questions. But anyway, you mentioned certification, and there's some, and I don't know if there's anything we can help with here, but there are a couple of people, well, a few people have written and said, I have filed a claim on the website. I'm not able to file the weekly certification on their website. I guess it's something that you have to do weekly in order to keep unemployment. I keep getting a message that I've already filed the certification for the week of whatever. Have you seen those situations, Amanda or Nina?
I have. You just have to. Just have to keep trying. Okay. Sometimes you just need to go back the next day or later on in the day, depending on what time of day it is. The system is overloaded, and so you just have to keep trying.
So maybe as Courtney was saying earlier, Sundays?
It's Sundays and Fridays. According to DES, those are the less voluminous days for phone calls. Okay. The other thing I want to point out is, it's a fluid situation. As more people are becoming unemployed and are taxing the system, things change. But I do know that representatives, contact your representative, contact your senator, contact your congressperson, because their offices, I know for a fact, Ruben Gallego's office, Kirsten Sinema's office, David Schweigert's office are in contact with DES every week. Okay. And if your case is at the top of their minds, that tends to push things along. Okay. So especially if you have a representative who's up for re-election, contact them. It's a local program, but they have the means to work on your behalf. Granted, things are changing. It is fluid. There are more people, 635 some odd thousand people that have filed, but it couldn't hurt to do that.
Ashley says they're not even open on Sundays. Well, I guess they are during this time. They're taking calls, I would guess. And that's
they are taking calls on Sundays.
And Megan says, so we're all going to call those less volume days and create more volume. That's not getting answers. Okay. Hey, folks, we're trying to help here just a little bit, trying to give you.
Right. I wish we had all the answers for you. I really do. But we have your questions, and we go to DES every day with them. And we're just trying to share what we do have.
Courtney is well known at DES. We're going over there every day. Another issue that people are writing about is going back to work and the fear. I would like to know if the restaurant I worked at were to call me back and I have a doctor stating not to go back and that I'm at high risk for contracting COVID-19, will I still be able to collect unemployment if I refuse to go back? What would you, Nina or Amanda, say to that?
I mean, I think that
just generally,
like if you're part of a population that is at high risk, then DES's website itself says that you may be eligible for unemployment benefits. And I think that if you get a note from a doctor that might help bolster your claim, or from a family member's doctor that they're in a high risk category. But I would just caution people, if you're not in that high risk group, or you don't have a family member who's in a high risk group, that refusal of a suitable offer of employment might be reason to deny someone unemployment benefits.
Okay. All right. Some of the questions, Ashley Dorman's got a question. DES knew this was coming. Why did they prepare better? A lot of the questions are saying, 7 weeks, why is it taking so long? And I think, we've seen I think we've talked about it in a way indirectly, but is there a way that DES should have been prepared for this? I know it's a huge amount that came at them, but given what you go through, Amanda and Nina, what do you think about that?
I don't think anyone could have predicted that so many millions of people across the country would lose their jobs, and however many millions in Arizona are unemployed right now. I think DES had a responsibility to update its computer system, and they've known that their computer system has been old and antiquated for a number of years now. I would like to think that our unemployment rate should also be higher so that people aren't struggling when they're on unemployment. But could anyone have predicted the effect on the economy? I really don't believe so.
Okay.
I want to add on to what Nina was saying, which is absolutely right. Nobody could predict that this would happen. But I mean, Arizona has neglected its unemployment system. We were the 38th state to get the PUA system up and running. There are some states who have been up since the second week of April. They have paid out since the second week of April. And it's a reckoning right now because there are so many people that need it. But I think that if other states were able to do it, Arizona certainly could have been able to do it if it had prepared earlier.
Well, yeah, it's interesting too with, still currently, Kara Christ is actually director still of DES, but also director of the Department of Health. I mean, those are two major places, and you have one director for both. I guess what I wanted to ask, there are other questions here. They're I guess more basic questions, but maybe people don't understand about who qualifies for a PUA. We went over that a little bit. Some people are questioning if they do, and I don't know if they're talking about the jobs or the amount of money. But basically, you're talking about what? Part-time gig workers, freelance workers who weren't covered before?
Right. So generally, independent contractors were not eligible for unemployment because they didn't pay into the system. Gig workers don't pay into the system. People who were monetarily ineligible, who didn't earn enough money to qualify for unemployment, would not have received any funds. With the PUA, they're eligible for that $117 a week plus the $600 a week from the federal government.
Okay. What are some of the problems that you two see? What do you handle on a daily basis? What are some of the common things? And are there examples of things that people can get help with, and then other examples where it's just, you just have to wait?
I think right now, most things are people have to wait, and that's very unfortunate. I know that DES has hired more client advocates. They've hired more people to work in their call centers to answer questions. I don't know how much training they've received because they were just hired. I see everyday people who have hearings that are coming up, people who've appealed and they're waiting to hear when their hearings are going to be, people who have issues on their claims. Another common thing, and I think there's about 3,000 or 4,000 people who have had overpayments and they haven't paid these overpayments off. And unemployment is saying, if you didn't pay your overpayment, if it was a fraud overpayment, we're going to take everything that you were eligible for to help pay your overpayment off. If it's administrative or non-fraud, we're going to take a percentage of your benefits now to pay off your overpayment. And some people didn't know they had overpayments. They were victims of identity theft. So now they're waiting to appeal these decisions. I have a case like that coming up this week.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually did a story about that last night about a guy who had like $2,000 in, well, his overpayment was much less than that, but it was from 10 years ago. So there were fees and interest and all those different things. And he ended up borrowing money to pay $1,800 in order for them to release his claim. And he still hasn't been paid. So, if you do have if you have a claim, or rather an overpayment, I would think long and hard about the amount of money that you are going to pay to clear that overpayment, because it could tide you over until you get another job, because it won't make things move any quicker.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going through some of the comments here, and we try not to lose sight of it, but this is really, this is, of course, is affecting a lot of people. I mean, people are in a desperate situation, and a lot of these people, they're losing their, they say in these cases, losing their houses, losing their cars, because they don't have the job and don't have the unemployment money to help them out. And a lot of these questions just go back to, why is it taking so long? And there really isn't, I guess, a good answer for that. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is the system is old. There's too many people that are trying to use the system, and they don't have enough people to work the system. So it's the perfect storm, which nobody wants to hear. Nobody wants to hear that, but that is the truth of it. And unfortunately, DES won't answer. I won't say won't answer our questions, but often take a long time to answer our questions. And the people who run DES won't sit down on a daily basis, weekly basis, et cetera, to tell people what's going on.
This would have been a great forum for them.
It really would have.
Yeah. Hey, I think Brian Booth, I want to put that one up. This is a pretty good one. If you can find that cord one. They basically say, he says they literally could be hiring people to staff their call center 24/7 and kill two birds with one stone. That's actually a really good idea.
And I have asked them about hiring, because every time I interview somebody, they're like, tell them to hire me, I'll work there. Yeah. And I ask them about hiring, and I get a generic link to AZ job, something or the other. But they are, it's not just DES that is working this. They have a contractor. It's called Valor IT, I believe. So that's the company that has, I believe they have like 150 people that have signed on with DES. But listen, look up Valor IT and see if they'll set you up at home and get set up that way. I tried to find the job postings for the jobs. And in fact, I think that might be a story coming up. Look for some DES postings for these jobs, because they claim that they've hired an additional 100 people. So they say they have 250 people answering phones now, which I don't know that anyone has seen a difference, but they say they have that many people answering the phones. But what that means, we haven't seen it.
And I'm sure these cases aren't situations where you're talking to somebody for 5 minutes. Some of these take time to look through them and find out what's really going on here. I guess we should probably wrap this up. You have any closing thoughts here? Anything that you want, any advice to give people, or what would you like to tell them?
I mean, I've been reading some of the comments, and I think that, basically people are just expressing what we all know they're going through right now. It's just a really tough circumstance. They've gone several weeks without money and without their benefits, and so to feel frustrated is obviously normal. And we would just encourage you to keep calling DES, maybe call on the days that Courtney suggested, and then also, if you have further questions about your individualized circumstances, you can always go to our website and give us a call.
Okay, and there's a website right there. It's communitylegalservicesarizona.org. And again, you may not have qualified. Maybe look before, you didn't qualify because your income was too high. It may not be that income now, so you may qualify because it's your income. Go ahead.
I do have a question for either Nina or Amanda, and it's a question that we've got via email and a couple of times in the feed here about child support. So there are folks who did get their money, right? Or are anticipating getting their money, who either child support was taken out, or something has gone on to where they're not getting the full amount. How does that work?
It goes back to the computer system and recognizing what is recognizing what needs to be taken out, and because the system is old and it wasn't designed to capture this kind of data, it's sometimes it glitches and it's taking out all of the child support before it should be. So people should try and contact DES, especially if they're current with their child support. It will go back and take out back child support.
Okay. Okay.
So people can expect that if they owe back child support, it's going to come out of this money. Okay.
Okay. Well, I think that's the time that we were allotted at this time. I know there are a lot of questions that we didn't get to, but you can always contact us. And maybe we can put that email up, rebound@abc15.com. On ABC15, we do stories, the Rebound Arizona at 6, and actually in most all the newscasts. And that's the way to get hold of us if you've got issues that we can look into. Again, Courtney's been doing a great job of a lot of stories involving unemployment. We've been looking into, price gouging and evictions and stimulus checks. So we're hoping for more town halls in the next couple of weeks. Nina Torgovnik and Amanda Coldwell from Community Legal Services, thanks very much. I'd love to have you back sometime, and we appreciate what you do. All right, thank you. And thanks to all of you who came and tuned in, came here on Facebook today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.